Good, let's get going.
Okay, today we're going to be looking at publicity photos from the fair. If you are very fortunate enough to have one of my books, hint, hint, fun, fun. Now, I comment in my books all the time how I like to use amateur photos of the different fairs or events because, somebody can build a pavilion and decide that they're going to put out a publicity shot of it, and it may be the most boring pavilion in the world, and that's not what people take pictures of. And I always think of it, going back to the days of the fair. You had your roll of film with 12 or 24, 20 exposures, whatever, and you had to carry that film. You had to, well, first of all, you had to buy it. It was expensive. You had to then carry it around with you, judge which ones you wanted, get it developed, that sort of thing. So to me, it's always interesting to see what the amateur folks take pictures of. But on the flip side, the publicity photos also capture things that a lot of times you can't do as a average visitor, unless you happen to rent your own helicopter and fly over, that sort of thing. So about 2 years ago, somebody came up with a huge stash of publicity photos from the 64 fair. I think I had probably, I don't know, 40, 50 or something stacked away somewhere. But on eBay, this guy came up with 200 plus of them and was selling them in lots of 10. And he had been very nice and sorted them all out, A through Z or whatever. And I think there were probably around 24 lots of them, and I ended up with about 22 of the lots. So I'll go through not quite A through. I'd say we're going to hit A through M, but even with the ones you got, for some reason you didn't get every pavilion, so you might get 4 shots of the American Israel pavilion, but none of something else. So it's not a comprehensive. Uh, uh, you know, the Fair Corporation has zillions and zillions and zillions of photos, but whether or not they all got printed, and if they're all out there, the New York City Public Library has the photo collection for both the 39 and the 64 fairs, and they've scanned and digitized an awful lot of the 39 fair ones that you can find online, but they're not doing and don't apparently have any plans right now to do the 64 ones. So I've been taking these photos. When I scan them, I then try to also restore them, take out, the dust and dirt and scratches, and sometimes they've gotten folded in that. One of the things you're going to see is a number of these had a slip of paper on the back, and if somebody knows the journalistic thing for whatever they call the publicity blurb that goes in the back, there was scotch taped on the back. Well, unfortunately, scotch tape is very acidic, and you'll see sometimes in the pictures, the unrestored ones in particular, where there was a brown spot on the picture from the glue. As I restore them, I try to take that out and turn away the ravages of time. So let me start sharing the screen here, and okay, we don't have any video or sound, so I don't have to click those buttons. So we'll start with, as I said, these publicity photos are kind of neat in a way that we get, sometimes it's the concept art, sometimes it's the construction views, and other times it's the actual pavilions. And what I get a kick out of on some of these things is, and Carol knows, I have zero artistic skills whatsoever. But when I see the amount of detail that they went into in some of these things to do, and if we zoom in on like this one, the administration building, all the little cars in the parking lot and everything. I get a kick out of it. Now, in some cases, we're going to see the names of the people that did some of these, and others, I have no idea who these people are. What if they ever did anything famous or anything else. But the administration building is tucked up in the northwest corner of the grounds. What I get a kick out of, let me just zoom back out here 1 second, is sometimes you get the difference between fact and reality. So we got this super nice looking freeway going by with these great looking bridges and everything. And of course, there is no great looking freeway or anything like it, but we got Manhattan in the back. So this is the real entrance to the administration building. It actually had two. And this was the main entrance where folks would come in and go to all their meetings. And way down here at the other side of the building was another entrance. and that was Robert Moses' private entrance because he would just pull up in his chauffeur-driven car. Is despite all the highways and everything he built in the city of LA, Moses never learned how to drive. So his limousine would take him in, and he'd have to go right into his private suite, and that way he didn't have to, work with all the rank and file if he didn't want to. The artwork for some of these is really accurate to how they were built. In some cases, you think you were almost looking at a black and white picture. In other cases, like the transportation pavilion, the original design of it was totally different than what was built. And again, these unsung, to me, heroes that come up with this stuff, I have no idea who Michelle is, whether it's first name or last name, but very, very nice representation of the pavilion. And then sometimes the publicity photos are great because you get things that are very hard as a visitor to shoot, that either the crowd is in front of you, there's plexiglass between you and it, the lighting's just not right or whatever, but we end up with this shot. And if we zoom in here on the sign here, we can see that the sign is telling us what the particular scene of the photo is. Then, as I mentioned, on the back, a lot of these have these little factoid sheets, things trying to get the newspapers or magazines or whatever to carry the story. So a lot of times it's kind of interesting because you'll go through, like, when it says we get to the one for the Austria pavilion, it will describe how the pavilion was divided into 3 sections. I never really noticed that myself, whether they actually built it out that way as planned, but it's kind of interesting to see, some of the extra little bit of factoids you can get out of it.
And it was beautiful rough.
What's that?
Facade of the beautiful rough in American Red. Just a typo, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, we're going to see a number of those. Yeah, no problem. So here's the pavilion as actually built. Again, 1964 fair opens. They did various additions and changes. So American Israel later added giant blowups of Israeli stamps. They also put vines and other entrance way out here to make it a little bit more appealing. But a lot of these pictures have down here a serial number, World's Fair number, or they also have a D number. I don't know what the D stood for, but again, it can be traced back to the negatives. Same thing, same little tear sheet on the other photo. A lot of the photos didn't have it, or they would just be in the back, the remnants of the old Scotch tape, and the sheet had long since gone. Then you get some of these pavilions, like the Pavilion of American Interiors, which I thought was an absolute snooze fest at the fair. But if you read it, boy, I tell you, this thing is really great. Over $1.5 million just to build it, 38,000 square feet and everything. And it's nice to know that these were not anything eye-shocking. These were tasteful displays. So you figure somebody had to write all this stuff, and how do you go and you get your newspapers hooked or whatever that they cover it, and you wonder if how many of these things ever did get reproduced and that sort of stuff. I also got a kick in the days before correcting. Now you do something in the computer, you just backspace or anything, but evidently for the Fair Corporation, they did not have any budget to buy whiteout, because if you spell display, you just fix it and go on your way again. Alaska Pavilion is kind of interesting. Although it's a black and white photo, it always captured one of the things I could never really understand about the Alaska Pavilion, which is that you can see a line right here where this part down here, this part up here were different shades of white. And it always looked to me like somebody had, just been painting it and run out of the right color paint or whatever. But it shows up all the time in the color photos, and I was really surprised how well it shows up in the black and white as well. So a lot of these things were taken during the preview days of the fair. They were letting family members come in and basically what we would at Disney call a soft opening to try to get things worked out. So a lot of the publicity photos, everything looks like this with the trees. No, no foliage or anything. On some of these, you expect to see people almost wearing ski jackets or something, but this is probably right before the fair opened. And again, one of the things on the back of it, the 330-foot totem poles carved for the original fair are still there, and they still exist. And you can see them up in Alaska. There's a totem pole museum, and they're on display up there. And we get some nice views. This one, I think, was taken from the New York State Tower. You can start. Oh no, here's New York in the back. I have to see where this was taken from. I have to look. But you
Oh,
can,
the gondolas, skyride or whatever.
could be, yeah, it could be the Skyway. What's interesting is you can start dating some of these by what's in them or what's not in them. So in this particular area, you can see everybody down here looking at the dance area, and they later ended up putting on a roof here because the New York sun and the heat and humidity and everything, despite the folks, the performers came from Africa, they found it to be pretty brutal out there dancing. So this area got covered over with a giant sunscreen for it. There's some things you look at. I've seen all these little pavilions here because say Senegal might be in one, or Zambia in another. You had the restaurant up here where the giraffe Susie would come and eat. But then you spot other things. I don't recall ever seeing this particular tower with a thatched roof before. So I'm going to have to now go back and look at my own pictures of it and see if it's one of those things that was there the whole time or taken out for some reason. It's just an interesting structure. I was trying to figure out if there were lights up there that they lit up this area at night, and I said, no, here's all the lights right here for the dance area. So no idea what this giant tower is, and now it's one more thing to go search for. Big sheet for the back of this about everything that's going to be going on in the pavilion. Again, they'll reuse this one on several different photos. Somehow this one got out of sequence. I got to go and reorder them, but the hospital was hopefully a spot you never saw unless you were A, walking by it, or B, they were curing you for some ailment or injury that you occurred. But the Tomatic Hospital, as the sheet will tell us, well, I can zoom in here real quick. They did have a display out here explaining to people walking by what the hospital was, and as a sheet here said, it was a concept that was going to be a prefabricated hospital that either small towns could build at a low cost because it was all prefab, or they could be dropped into disaster zones. So if you're having heavy flooding or earthquakes or things like that, and your existing hospitals are destroyed, you can go and get one of these airlifted or brought in on cargo trucks. They, I believe, only ended up building 2 of these after the fair, and one of them got used for about 40 years before it finally wore out and got taken down. But it was a doctor that came up with the idea for it, and they were real state of the art with video monitoring of the patient beds, that sort of thing. So they really went out of their way to bring us the latest in healthcare. So we're back to Africa. Again, my thought again on this sort of thing. Before the fair opened, the landscaping's not quite done and everything. Workman's benches and other stuff scattered around. But you got to start practicing, getting ready to see how the whole thing's going to go before you let the public in. Same sheet on the back. And now the fair looks to be open. Here you can see I've tried to minimize the damage that these pieces of Scotch tape do. But again, if I got really involved, I could come and paint it all out. But with 200 plus of these to do, some stuff gets done and some stuff gets on the I'll go back and do it again later pile. Some of these had much shorter little blurbs on the back. Negative number again, D1303. No particular date here, but it's helpful to know. I guess I would have no way of knowing if these were Watusi dancers or something else. You just hope that whoever did it knew what they were doing, that it ended up on the right picture. No more publicity shots, the same blurb. I just put them on the back because they were all there. Then, as I mentioned, you get into things the average person couldn't do unless you had a helicopter or a small flying plane. So, as the sheet in the back will tell us, this is a panoramic view of the fair. But you know, if you again we zoom in on it, you can start seeing whether or not the fair is open or not, because in this particular one it is. It's full of people and everything. And others, you'll see all sorts of trucks and things going around. You can kind of try to figure out when are the dates on these things by how far along the Belgian village is. But on the back here, it just again tells us, you know, 5 main sections. You can start trying to date some of these things again by the D number, the negative number, and you know they did seem to just go sequentially up. Austria is after the fair, it ended up as a ski resort upstate New York, and sadly about 8 years or so ago burned down. But again, D number 282 real early, so probably before it's open, which is why you don't bother to see any people. And 3 main sections: promotion of Austria, tourism, and economy. So I did not know that beforehand. Bourbon Street, I tell you, I don't know what you could have done to make this area look better. You know, I guess in retrospect, it's pretty much like the real Bourbon Street. You know, looks a lot better at night than it does during the day. But if we zoom in here on this one, we have, you know, the French restaurant Chez Germain. It looks like they're putting up a menu board or something outside, kind of a giant bottle of champagne. But this is interesting here, the Doll Museum. I don't think I have any other shots that show the entrance to the Doll Museum, and we're going to see it mentioned on the backside in a second. But that's one of the things that's really, to me, kind of neat when you buy stuff and you don't know what you're going to get, and you have you know, all of a sudden you come up with something you don't think you've seen before. And in here, this tells us what's in there, and the Doll Museum, a fine collection of dolls. So again, it was not the most exciting part of the fair, but it was it had its own sets of challenges and everything. So this later design, this is probably a 65 publicity photo because it's no longer Louisiana's Bourbon Street. They got rid of the giant Mardi Gras figures that were up in the sign, and they added all this extra, you know, metal lace work and everything here for the 65 season to try to make it a little bit more visual appeal for folks to come in. Then you have here one of the strange combinations of the fair, the one exhibit that incorporates both the aerial tower ride and the Belgian waffles restaurant, because they were one part and parcel of the same exhibitor. It's not this that somebody else put this tower in and somebody else put the waffle next to it and they were caught in the same shot. It was the one exhibitor that had the idea to do both. So the tower ride was went up, rotated slowly around, gave you you know, panoramic view of the fair. And if you were lucky and didn't get stuck up there, as did happen at time to time. So again, the BFE waffle restaurant and aerial ride. So unique Belgian taste sensation, the Belgian waffle. And as we all know, that became one of the huge giant hits of the fair. The aerial tower ride, not so much. I did mention it on prior talk where 40, 50 years after the fair, somebody was building a ride like that, and the people that built this one claimed that the people were misusing their patents to build a new tower ride. And I was contacted by some of the lawyers for pictures and things like that. And I never thought 40 years after the World's Fair that somebody would be suing somebody else about building another copy of the aerial tower ride. Chungking, if you grew up back in New York, when I did, Chungking was in all the local supermarkets, and you would buy a can of Chinese food, and usually got like two cans that were, held stuck together, and one had the wet stuff in it that you would heat up and everything, and the other had dry, crispy noodles, and you would cut off the tops of both cans and mix your Chungking dinners together. But they had that was the whole idea for having a pavilion. They wanted to see, they didn't really want to serve food in restaurants. They wanted people to get to know the name Chungking and go buy it at their local markets and bring it home. But they had a great deal for 99 cents. You got an entire meal at the World's Fair, including a drink, and really helped put them on the map. This was interesting because, again, it mentions the two pagoda tea houses and everything, and several small adjoining lakes. And I'm trying to place where those small adjoining lakes are at Chungking, and I'm going to have to go and again look for that. Whether or not they actually ever built them or not, but somebody at some point thought there were two lakes there. So one more thing to go play sleuth on. So that's as far as the ones so far that I got into restoring. So the next of these, they're going to be, not 100% lined up, straight and everything. I'll fix it all on the computer. But so we're going to see some of uh, the little tear sheets here, and then we get to see the actual pavilion. What I tend to do is scan them in color because I get a greater bit depth, and then I reduce them to black and white, so you can see sort of a yellow tint that's on the paper. We'll fix all that up. As they say in Hollywood, we'll fix it in post. And this I got a kick out of here. A referral lounge has a direct tie line, which should be TIE line. But why do you need a direct tie line with the USO Times Square Club? I don't have any idea how often the USO Club in the Coca-Cola exhibit needed to talk to the USO Club at Times Square. Who has seen for the number of times you needed to do it, you would probably just dial the phone. But to have the bat phone sort of thing, yes, Commissioner Gordon. So and you had firsthand observation posts of listening ham operators talk. So Clairol, great one. You never get away with today. Totally, absolutely sexist pavilion, women only. And as they mentioned here, signed exclusively for women, and admission is restricted to women. So you got to go and see how your hair would look in various styles and colors as you went through it. So here you're inside the garden, and all the women are looking through, and they're going to get projected onto the various devices what it would look like for their hairstyle. What is interesting is if you zoom in here, you can start seeing some of the way that they did it with projecting the things out. Some of the mechanics of it are hidden down below. So they're not seeing it from inside because they're inside an enclosure, but we're able to make up some of the projection mechanisms. So here they're giving beauty hints as they glide around the flower garden. Excuse me. Okay, we hop over to Chrysler, the semi-forgotten automaker from the fair, with their assembly line ride. In the background, the travel and transportation pavilion. And then again, you can start dating some of these things by when things you see or don't see in it. The Chunky Candy Factory was a great one where you started at this end, mixing up chocolates and nuts and other odds and ends. It went down conveyor belts, went through a cooling tunnel, and then it went into the back building, which ran in the other direction. And they would wrap them, and then you could get a candy bar there at the fair. They realized the cooling tunnel did not work, and it worked when the fair opened. But as soon as summer hit and the summer sun hit the cooling tunnel, they realized the candy was melting in the cooling tunnel. So they had to go and put an extension over to keep it from melting in the sun. Over here, the concrete figures are kind of neat because you see a shape here. See if I can zoom in on this one just a second. Okay, kind of a concrete shape with some things coming down. Well, there's another concrete shape further on that if you line them up, it becomes an elephant. So you got the feet of the elephant, and the head would be another part. These figures were then donated. This is a giraffe again, if you line them up. The figures are donated and are now on display at an elementary school on Long Island. So it's kind of neat to see, an artist figuring out where do you position these things, and the concrete blob and this concrete blob, when you put them together, they become an animal. And the background here, oh, they mentioned here the unique outdoor sculpture continuum was kind of neat. I don't recall an Old Nick candy bar. Anybody else ever eat one of
Oh,
those or addicted to them or anything? I don't recall what's in an Old Nick. If it had peanuts or something, I wouldn't have eaten it, so I don't like them. So, but
I barely remember the name, but I don't think I ever had one.
yeah, it was interesting because Chunky made all sorts of stuff that I do remember, but I just don't remember Old Nick. Then we hop over again. These things jump the years. Winston's staring here at us, and he's looking at us for the Churchill pavilions for the '65 fair. You can get an idea, by the way, of how many publicity photos they took. When I showed you the one of the Austria pavilion, I think it was D282 or something. Well, right here, D6825. So, one heck of a lot of photos. Whether or not they were all ever printed, a lot of them probably still only exist in negative form because you take 100 shots, you look at them on a light table, and you decide, or you do a proof sheet, and then you order 2, 3 of them printed, and off you go. But they've got at least 6,800 of them on file, and that's at the very, very beginning of the '65 season. So when I think I have a lot of pictures, I know I now have a hell of a target to go get some more. So dynamic maturity, better known today as the AARP, and they had a camera obscura that you could come up here and go into the pavilion and see the fair below. Again, a lot of these things are early shots without the people going around. You can see, by the way, on this one and up here, some of these got water damaged in a prior ownership, and that's all stuff I've managed to correct on the ones that you've seen before.
Oh, look at the water. It looks like it's really windy out.
It does, doesn't it? I
Yeah.
was looking at that. I was wondering how much of that is the fountain, which is just over here stirring it up, but
Oh, could be.
yeah, but no, I mean, it's much rougher. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you. It's much rougher than most days I remember seeing this thing going on. So in some of these, you wonder, were they testing the fountains and said, okay, we need to dial that puppy back? Like the Astral fountain, when they first put that sucker on, everybody around there got soaked because in any sort of wind, the fountain, the water would just blow. So they actually had to install a wind measuring device that would dynamically dial down the strength of the fountain. And just on this particular one, it does look like the North Sea in November, doesn't it? What's kind of nice too is if you go on some of these, you can start picking up the signage. And again, the National Retired Teachers Association, as I mentioned today, the American Association of Retired People. So dynamic maturity, the AARP, everybody gets their things in the mail all the time. Well, they go back to their exhibit at the fair. And they had a very nice little garden in the back where people, particularly, you didn't have to be a retired teacher, but anybody could come in the back and relax. So they mentioned the camera obscura. And we go over to Denmark now. This is a slide at Denmark. Denmark had a playground. There were a couple of places at the fair where you could park your kids and pay a fee to have somebody watch them while you went off and enjoyed the fair. Denmark's hope was that you would park your kids here and come in and have a nice dinner. But they had a very nice playground. This is where Legos made a big hit for people coming out. They're pretty smart. Let the kids go play with the Legos. They enjoy them, and then now when they go home, of course, mom and dad buy me Lego. But they had a neat slide that you can see coming down here, and all sorts of kids playing around. So that was a great one, and dynamic maturity and all in the back there. So the restaurant looked really nice. We never ate there. That's on my my budget area. But I do have quite a few pictures of the food displays and everything there in Denmark, and looked like to be a very high-end sort of experience. And DuPont, the wonderful world of chemistry, and again, the yellow damage from the tape here. I'll try to get all that fixed, but you can, very early on, trees are just starting to bud here. The numbers are going up a little, but you know, still early in the fair. This is a really lengthy one. You know, you see this put together, and you know, somebody going to come and you know, put this in their newspaper about how DuPont has diversified their contribution to the health, country progress, and economy of the country. Probably not. Eastern Airlines was unique. There were a number of airlines that had exhibits at the fair, usually in the travel and transportation area, but they were the only ones that had their own pavilion here. And their whole concept was, if you are coming into the fair or going out for leaving the fair, you can check in and bring your luggage to the fair, and we will check it in and get it on your plane. So I don't know how many people actually did it, but you could show up at the main gate with your, you know, they probably back then didn't have rolling suitcases, but you show up at the main gate with your suitcases and bring them on in, and you know, no security checks like, you know, we have today or anything. Bring them into Eastern Airlines. They would check the bags for you right here, and they had buses that would then take you out to the New York area airports. So you would check it in. They would say you're on, you know, Eastern Airline flight, whatever, and give you a boarding pass, and you get on the bus. So you're thinking, if you were having one last day at the fair, that was a great way to do it. You know, check out of the hotel, you know, come in, check your bags, and you know, fly back to Peoria. And they mention all that, which I just mentioned. So Kodak, one of the first pavilions actually built, and the first pavilions actually torn down at the fair. Again, you can start trying to date the Kodak pictures by what's up on the giant screen up there. And someday, I hope to, and I probably likely never will, make together a chart of what pictures were up when. And what gets confusing is, you know, I've seen pictures here before of the geisha putting on her lipstick, but then I look at this one and said, I don't think I've ever caught this particular photo before. And then I started thinking about, wait, I think I may have. It's some women at a fountain, you know, because you get them at different angles and that sort of thing. But if I can then say, okay, this one was here at this date, because they didn't change them all simultaneously. This one might be up here for a month, and then they changed this one, and then they changed the next one or whatever. But it's again a way to date them. Some days I know very specifically, because a picture will be dated August 8th, 1964, and I'll be able to say exact what was there. Others, it will just say August, and then was that August that it was shot, or August it was developed? Who knows? So 5 giant color prints, 30 feet by 36 feet. Kodak, being a photography nut, I absolutely loved the Kodak Pavilion. Going through all their various displays. My big disappointment was, unlike 39 World's Fair, they weren't giving out free color films. So if they had, I would have hit it quite often. Garden here, Garden of Mediation, or Meditation rather, was originally supposed to be something else. You know, wasn't the area wasn't leased out, so the Fair Corporation put in a garden, and I thought it was very nice, you know, that you had some of these green areas, and you know, some benches you could just go and relax and that sort of thing. And I thought this just made for an interesting, you know, reflection in the water there.
A lot of the stones from that are still there, aren't they?
What's that?
A lot of the little stones and inscriptions on the ground are
Yeah,
still
the runes that are yeah, RUNES type things. Yeah, the little garden meditation are still blocked there. And we have one of the entrance pylons. So we're here at Gotham Plaza, and you can see a pretty busy day there. And we zoom in down here. The New York's World's Fair Police Department, they had their paddy wagon running around, and generally, from what I understand, they didn't use it so much to pick up people and haul them in or anything, but it was a great way if you were working at one part of the fair that they would take you around and drop you off, so you didn't have to walk from one end to the other just to get back to your locker. And a good thing about here, the pylons, they are what are called impressive in size and structure, and essentially pure decoration. You know, they obviously, if you were already in the fair, you were there, you didn't need it to help you find anything, so they were just there for eye candy. Equitable life insurance, and this their VIP lounge here in the back. On the other side here is the counter that had the counter of all the people living in the United States at that particular time. This, if you were a VIP though, this is a great thing because this looked out over the fireworks show. So they have 45-foot map of the United States, pulsing lights illuminate each state as births and deaths occur. I mentioned before, as a kid, I was absolutely in awe that somebody at some place in some hospital in, you know, say Butte, Montana, was letting the World's Fair know that Mrs. Jones just had a baby, light up the light and change the number. You know, I had no idea this was all just done with statistics, but I mean, to me, I was really convinced at 12 years old that every hospital in the United States was letting it know. And I can remember thinking when the light showed up that somebody died, thinking, oh, that's pretty sad. So pavilion that ran into all sorts of problems and doesn't show up a lot. The Pavilion of Fine Arts was one of those things where it was originally, I believe, supposed to be the Argentinian pavilion. They built it, didn't have the money to actually put in any displays. Fair Corporation came up with Fine Arts, and then later it became the Bar Green Buffet restaurant. So again, you know, description here of all this wonderful stuff you're going to have. And it didn't work out all as well as planned. The United States Pavilion in the background, Oklahoma in the front here, and again, nice convenient spot to rest, but they at that point didn't have enough in the way of benches. So Federal Pavilion, you know, to me it was the United States Pavilion. They should be under U, but no, whoever was doing these was the Federal Pavilion, so it's under F. And we're up to 4/22/65, and again, quite a few pictures that they've taken. And whether we call it the Federal or the United States Pavilion, absolutely incredibly wonderful structure, and a shame that it was lost to time. So it's just some interesting factoids here, and again, very early on, if we go back and look here, everybody's nothing growing in any of the trees. If we look into you know, how people are dressed here and everything, everybody's obviously wearing you know, heavier coats and that sort of thing. So the 217 number shows us real early on in the fair. And fountains of the fairs, a lot of these things are done, again, publicity stuff, a real early number down here, trying to get it to you know, into the magazines and everything. The fair is coming, it's almost here. Be sure to book your flight. And a real interesting fact sheet here about all the fountains. Let's let you read that for a second. This fountain will remain as a permanent park feature after the fair, except we won't actually be able to run the water because everybody will run out and use it as a swimming pool. So it's still under F, or F for Formica, so the plastic house up there. I'd like to go back and, you know, check out and see if how many of these things, like some of these drinking fountains, are still there and can orient yourself. So still continue with F. We're into Ford. Every time you show these, you know, I'll post a picture of some of these things on Facebook, and people instantly start trying to tell you which, you know, cars these are. the people start talking about, oh my God, you can actually see pavement. You know, the roads are empty enough that there's nobody on them. So it was interesting when the folks at the University of Florida did the 3D, not 3D, the computer animated recreation of the fair. I got a real kick of one of the things they did was they used a lot of my photos to recreate the fair, but they were able to take a still photo like this and make it look like a moving picture, because they would just like take out this car, move it a little bit, plunk it back down, move it a little bit, plunk it down. The road was so empty that they were able to do it. So you just see this picture of this car driving down the road, and the people driving the other way, and they were all able to animate the traffic because there was so much empty road in the pictures. 4 huge ultra modern pavilion. By the way, just go back at one point, there had been talk and serious talk about keeping the rotunda after the fair. And I've got a friend of mine, Kevin Karsh, actually got the plans for how they were thinking about connecting this over to the Hall of Science. And they were going to take out this entire building here, but the rotunda being left for displays, and what they could do to put flooring in there and other odds and ends. So this almost came to be a New York landmark, but was lost. And all the folks are lining up here again early on. One of the ways we can date this is the booth here. And this is where you came and at the leaving it, you would walk out and say, I'm from New York, and you get your glow in the dark Ford badge. They relocated it later on, making sure that people actually went on the ride and just couldn't walk up and get a badge without going on. Florida, in the background, you can see all sorts of apartment buildings and things being built, but Santa Maria is just over here to the side. Florida was basically where it had been for the 1939 World's Fair, so still in the lake amusement area as opposed to the state and federal area. And the Festival of Gas, their restaurant in the back here. Those on a quick tour of all the pavilions and those who can linger. So you have what you call it, the Albert Fisher liked to eat here a lot. He said it was one of his favorite restaurants. That was again above my budget. I was definitely, Carol can attest to this. Maybe this is why, Carol, maybe this is why I like hot dogs and hamburgers so much. You know, it's all I could afford back in '64, and maybe got imprinted on me. She's always giving me a hard time about a man who lives on hamburgers. So that's my excuse, is that, you know, now you know why.
Special see-through wall. Isn't that called a window?
Yeah, you know, it was actually, when this thing was designed originally, there was not supposed to be any glass in there. The whole idea was to have air curtains come down, and that you could look outside and see all everything without windows. But they found out that the New York heat was just going to be too much, and also the air velocity that you needed to try to keep the air conditioning in and the heat out. So at the very last minute, the design was changed to put in windows.
Ah,
Up here, by the way, is their VIP lounge. You can see the door into it. So Greyhound was a big exhibit in here, big cafeteria. And this was a really, really neat thing. As a kid, you could go in because you could use your very first microwave oven. You would go to a vending machine, sort of like an automat type of thing, buy your food, walk over, push the button in a minute, and it would be hotter than hell. This almost also became a New York landmark. After the fair, the Greyhound Pavilion was one of the very few structures left in the fair, and it was intended at first to be a New York Fire Department firehouse. And so it stayed there. Everything around it was torn down, and they eventually decided it was going to be more expensive to retrofit it for a firehouse than not. So it was finally torn down, but it sat out there in the field all by itself for quite a period of time. And we have some of the history here. They also had things inside, that simulate driving around in a Greyhound bus. You could go meet Lady Greyhound, their dog mascot, that sort of thing. And it was this one I did eat in. This was within my budget, and knowing me, I probably went and heated up a hamburger. Republic of Guinea, I think I only went there once, and the big reason was we went in. They had turnstiles, and they charged you, I think it was 10 cents or a quarter to go and walk through their pavilion. You know, you always wonder how much money they ever made on the admissions to these things, and as opposed to how many people they kept out. But that was you know, a lot of the international pavilions were totally free. This was kind of a outlier in that regard. And Billy Graham. So we have one of the escorters out here, parked outside. So his pavilion. This I've talked at the other things. People say build a tower outside your pavilion. It will be an eye catcher. And that was one of the big things. People would say, meet me at the tower. Which towers? The Coke Tower, the Pepsi Tower, the Graham Tower, the Scott Paper Tower, I mean, the 7-Up Tower. I mean, but it's a great way to get more, you know, visibility and everything. If you zoom in on this one, this was made up of all these little metal discs, and I think they were fixed. I don't think they moved or you know, had any fluttering to it or anything. But again, you just wonder when the fair was torn down where they all went. Somebody was just posting in line that they got part of the RCA pavilion, and on that particular one, they had these metal copper colored discs that ring the edge of the building. And after the pavilion was torn down, the architect was signing copies of these and giving these things away. So you wonder if any of these little bits and pieces are sitting in somebody's backyard today. Graham Pavilion, the major thing was a giant chapel, air-conditioned theater that first would do 400, and then you try to get them to come into it says a counseling room. They actually had quite a few rooms that if you were interested in learning more, when you saw the first thing about man in the fifth dimension, if you saw it and you wanted to go and you know, talk to them, they had all sorts of little rooms that would take you into. And a nice nighttime shot of it, the luminaires lining the pathway down to the U.S. Pavilion. Pretty much the same thing.
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
Did you see the thing that I drew your attention to on Facebook about Doug Drexler having one of those light fixtures in his backyard?
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I've been to his house and sat on his World Fair bench under his World Fair lamp, and in his garage he has Uncle Martin's spaceship from My Favorite Martian. So, but yeah, you definitely know, you know, you get the guy's address, and you know you're getting there when you drive up, and there's one of the luminaires, and his is one of the smaller ones, but it's looming up over the backyard wall. So, yeah, it's kind of neat to see it there. So Greece, again, we got the Skyway going in the background. One-story structure. And they had a restaurant that was very popular with Greek food. General Motors, huge pavilion. I mean, they were determined. Futurama had been the big hit of the 39 fair. Disney approached GM about, hey, would you like me to do a talk for you? And they said, no, we've kind of got that in hand, thanks. And Futurama again became the #1 attended attraction for the '64 fair, in large part because they had a very good system for moving people through on their conveyor belt ride system, that they were able to really get people through it. Even with that, they ended up with lines that were far greater than their expectation. And I don't remember, I have a chart somewhere with the top attendance things. GM blew everybody away. So one of their big exhibits, 70,000 people per day. That's a pretty good ride capacity for going through some of these things. General Electric, one of my favorites, seeing the family as the electricity powered progress as they went through the various years. And it's still down in Florida today, been updated, and it's interesting, you know, that it's still there today, and I guess it's showing its wear. They said a couple weeks ago, father's hand fell off, and the pavilion had a problem. The family of squirrels got in and made a home, and you can imagine going through the thing and all of a sudden a squirrel goes running up the wall in the pavilion. But it's still in Florida, and when you go there today, it's a great way to get out of the heat and air, the heat and humidity. They mentioned the dome effect, which was not ever reproduced after the fair. This came out to Disneyland. Now it's in Disney World, but they never the dome did not come back. And it was hugely popular. That's why they had to go and take the land next to it and turn it into a waiting area. But I thought, for example, General Motors was impressive in all the little things about how you're going to have highways through the Amazon or go visit the moon or whatever. But GE, I thought was really entertaining. Great song. The figures moved and everything. Much more of my preference over GM. And we don't know a date on it, but we can tell from the number 64. Excuse me. General Cigar. Looks like the fountains have really died down here in this particular view. So and maybe they weren't having a windstorm or they had dialed the fountain down. But General Cigar with their magic show in there, and here is the smoke ring machine, and obviously they're not having any luck with it this particular day, or most days. It was a real flop. So telling everybody about the benefits of getting a good cigar. It's my how things have changed. So I get a kick out of this one. Designed for both children and adults, because we got to make children think about cigars, right?
Yep.
Lithuanian Wayside Cross, very serene type of area. Again, the fair did not lease out all the space that it wanted, so it made space available to any religions, things like that. This cross was a very nice area. It was intended to be left after the park ended. It was there for a number of years, and then for some incredibly senseless act of violence, vandals came in one night, absolutely destroyed it, and only left the concrete base. It was announced they were raising money, they were going to rebuild it, but for whatever reason, it was never done. And I believe the concrete base can still be found, but the whole rest of the cross was never done. Again, the Garden of Meditation. And you can see the cross will remain as a permanent part. It unfortunately did not. So we have the Hollywood Pavilion here, and I don't know if it shows up on this one. Let me see if I zoom in here. No, it doesn't really show over here. A&W Root Beer had a big stand over here. So, you have a giant Coke pavilion, a giant Pepsi pavilion, a giant 7-Up pavilion, and poor A&W Root Beer had 2 windows over at the sides of the Hollywood Pavilion. But it was a pretty popular pavilion. They had the concrete, hands and concrete ceremony done in front of it. But when you went inside, there were actual props from big movies that had just been made, and some of them had not even yet been in the theaters, and they had what you call it, a Western shootout and all that sort of thing. So they also had their own unique spelling of discotheque. But no, if you were living in New York and you could go and be on quote the set unquote of Gunsmoke, because they reproduced it at the fair, that was just so cool to be able to see some of that stuff. Hawaii, very popular. Again, they did charge money to go into Hawaii, but as opposed to Guinea, when you paid your money to go into Hawaii, you got a plastic lei that you could wear around your neck for the rest of the day. And another view of Hawaii. Hall of Science, you can see this is a later number, because again, as the pavilion was being built literally as the fair was going and underway. They were very, very, very far behind schedule, because the New York City government had a hard time actually, approving and allocating the funds, so they got a really late start on it. So for a long period of time, you could go into the underground part down here and go through these science exhibits while the construction work was going on above you. But Robert Moses only let them continue with it because it was supposed to be a permanent part, and it's still there today. It's a great building to go into. So again, some of the exhibit here of what's going inside. Permanent structure. And again, if you get to New York and you can go in there inside the Great Hall, it's done all in little glass blocks, with different colors, cobalt blue. The sun comes through it. It's really pretty inside. Hong Kong, huge disappointment. Nothing but shops and stalls and everything. But 3 Chinese junks in 1964. 2 of them in 1965. They tore one out because they wanted to put some other shops and stuff in. You could get fabulous furniture here. One of the things you could go in, get a Hong Kong. Hong Kong was famous for getting suits made to order quickly, and you could go in here and they would take your measurements, and somebody in China or Hong Kong would make a suit and they'd send it back to you. Hall of Free Enterprise. Again, what a wonderful thing capitalism is, and if you all just invest your money wisely and put it into business, everything will be good. So they talk about the 10 pillars of economic wisdom, and I think I probably went in there once and it was another snooze fest. Just kind of a profile view of the statue here, still in the park today. Freedom of the human spirit. And Ireland. Actually, I'm glad I know where this one is in the thing, because I now, when I was doing these, I found the sheet of paper for Ireland, and I didn't know where the pavilion was. It had fallen out, so now I know I can go and reattach it. This was Julimar Farms. The whole idea was you could go there, look and see all these great plants, and you could buy everything mail order, and they would deliver them to you. Julimar was a small outfit, spent a fortune to build a pavilion at the fair, and a few years later were gone totally bankrupt. And that happened to quite a few exhibitors that, it's really great, the whole idea of, mail order plants. But, most people probably would think about, I'll go to the local garden supply place, buy my rose bushes or whatever, because if you're in one part of the country, it would be like me trying to, buy a saguaro cactus out of a catalog and thinking it's going to grow. Wayne would be able to have some luck with it. I would not. But done by very famous architecture, Edward Darrell Stone. They had it was a very nice pavilion to go through. Lots of gardens. They had miniature horses and other things in there to entertain you, and it was impressive. What got a kick out of here was that the building was done by Edward Darrell Stone Sr. He did the building, and then you had the plantation building with gardens by his son. So keep it in the family. Johnson Wax, one of the huge hits of the fair. To Be Alive, an absolutely wonderful movie. Really very well done. The stuff that was I think made things like this pavilion really nice was it was very low key. Just like with Pepsi, they weren't shoving Coke down or Pepsi down your throat. You go there, you see the dolls, and when you come out, there's a Pepsi exhibit. Same thing with Johnson. The movie, very inspiring sort of movie, which you can still see today at the Johnson Wax headquarters. But he came out of the movie and small little displays on Johnson Wax and shoe polish and stuff like that. It was very low key. International Plaza, lots of different shops from around the world. The inside, we have a beef eater. You can see him standing down here telling somebody how to get someplace else, but as the sign says Tower of London, and you could go inside and you could see genuine imitation replicas of the crown jewels. And if you came over here to the Tower of London shop, you could actually buy some of them. But this sign, again, you get some nice details of some of these. These are all some of the little countries that some of them had their own big displays. Thailand, for example, did. Obviously, Mexico did. But others, Monte Carlo and everything, they were only represented by small shops and that, because the Bureau of International Expositions had basically told everybody you can't exhibit, but that couldn't stop somebody from opening up their own, Indian restaurant or something. So IBM, pre-fair. It's not quite done yet. The giant ovoid egg that we go up into and see the movie. Again, you don't know how much of the impression things make on you when you're 12 years old, but I love the IBM Pavilion. There were about 30 screens inside that theater, and the movie was just popping from screen to screen and live action stuff going on. And you wonder how much that helped ignite my love of computers. And India had a very nice pavilion for the fair. And some stuff they made inside, most of it was imported and sold there. State of Illinois, this entrance foyer here. The one thing that really annoyed me about the state of Illinois is the way they would have these signs and they would break them up. You know, it would seem like there had to be some other way that you could do these without having to hyphenate. I'm just not used to signs hyphenated on the sides of buildings. So anyway, sign about or sheet about what's going to be on inside. Life-size audio animatronic figure. Again, huge hit. People could not believe Mr. Lincoln wasn't real. So we have a nice overhead view, and this is kind of one of the things I like about some of the publicity shots. The little pavilions here, little buildings in the back, where the replicas of ancient homes and everything that were built and put on site. And when you see the picture on a postcard and stuff, but it's kind of hard to place it in perspective where it was within the the building itself, the grounds, and this sort of thing helps out. Here's the Lincoln statue that we just saw on horseback. And again, a different view over here. Up here is the Long Island Railroad exhibit. So different things about all the things they did on Long Island. Duck farming was a little exhibit here. In the center here was a display with a Long Island Railroad was the big sponsor of this area here. So they naturally had a thing here about the railroad, and they gave out timetables and would tell you how you could get from the train station. It was just not too far away. You can see the tracks right here. How you could get out to Babylon, or how you could get to East Meadow or anywhere else on the line. And we'll go through these. Jordan, kind of a unique building made of, as the thing will tell us, reinforced concrete. So gold mosaic. It was a pretty pavilion. I don't remember anything inside other than some displays. I don't think they had a movie or anything, but they also had some interesting shops making stuff. The column of Jerash still out in the park today, so you can help orient yourself. Nice nighttime view of it. Same sort of thing. Korea, they had a restaurant out back, which again, I don't think I ever ate at this particular one, but they was part of this branch rail type thing here. So that they had some restaurants that looked nicer than others and operated by them. So they had their tea house. This is the more traditional view. The restaurant's over here, but this is shows up more in pictures. The entrance into Korea, taken from the skyway. You can see one of the pylons down here. Down below, a very large luminaire, but also one of the AT&T phone booths, the family phone booths that you go in the world's largest speakerphone. Not that it's sexist or anything, but the gracious Korean girls will serve us, so they'll take good care of us. Long Island Railroad, the train is now out in Riverhead, New York, and you can go ride it. I posted a video a while back that I took a ride on, and man, I was 12 years old again. I had fun. But windmill that they, growing up on Long Island, I don't think I'd ever seen a windmill, but it turned out that in the years before, there were a whole bunch of them powering grist mills and stuff. So display here, a sign about it. I think the map of Long Island with model trains running around it. I mentioned this before. My roommates in college, his father was vice president of the Long Island Railroad, and he ended up with the model trains, which were American Flyers trains, not Lionel, and they are hand painted to be Long Island Railroad trains. And Bill came back from his tour in Germany, and his mother had gotten rid of the trains, figuring nobody would want them. Amazingly, somebody I know now has some of the trains, that lives in Baldwin, which was where we lived. So it's a small world. I was amazed that the things actually showed up. Tour over Lowenbrow now. Again, nice aerial view. What's interesting is on some of these, you can look and see, we're going to see about the number of maypoles and that. But there were some areas back here that don't appear to be used for anything. You wonder who the person is wandering through it. There's a pole sticking up out of the ground, but you wonder what it was intended for, and why it's there and never used. But the major thing at Lowenbrow was to sit at a picnic table and pretend you were at Oktoberfest. And from the buildings here, they would bring you large quantities of beer, and it was, as you can tell, a pretty popular pavilion. So as a replica of an 18th century Bavarian hamlet, they're bringing you Lowenbrow, a beer imported from Munich, and 31 maypoles all scattered around. So very, very popular pavilion. I don't think Lowenbrow was too well known a brand at that particular time, but it certainly seemed to help put them on the map.
Bill,
Yeah.
do you know if they ever put canopies over those tables?
No, they were out in the sun the entire time, as far as I can recall, Randy.
Yeah.
But I guess if it's a hot day and you have a cold beer, it's better than it's a hot day and you're doing the Watusi. So
Sell more beer, yeah.
yeah, exactly. They had the beer wagon, which they would hitch up to the horses, and they would take it through the fairgrounds, sort of the Pied Piper, to come back and follow us back to Lowenbrow. And one of the fountains here going along. And again, I'll have to fix the little Scotch tape stuff, but I guess the water is kind of stirred up in this particular day. So I never thought of this. I see the fountain, it says a water bubble. I never really thought of that being a water bubble. So Morocco, big restaurant, did very, very well there. Again, to the point where the restaurant got overfilled, and they put out a Moroccan tea tent in an unused piece of land out there, and were able to increase their revenue stream with that. This is the sort of stuff I liked as a kid. Again, I joke about not being able to go to the expensive restaurants. In reality, I just didn't have the money for it. But Morocco was free. You didn't have to eat at the restaurant. You could go in and tour the pavilion, and you could talk to the people that work there. And I found it fascinating to go in and speak to all the people from around the world, and talk to them about their countries and their exhibits. So to me, that I love obviously the GEs and GMs and that sort of thing. But to me, even though the BIE got people to boycott it, I really did feel the word world was a very important part of my experience there. And I just love going to these pavilions and, just sightseeing and talking to the people, and, that sort of thing. Mexico, very impressive pavilion, and displays inside, trying to shed the image of people sitting under a cactus and a sombrero and a serape, trying to go on. They did have a lot about Mexican culture, but they also had a lot about industry and what you could expect. Ancient calendar here, some more modern statues here. Again, the fair is not quite open, so we look in, and they are still getting it going and getting it ready for the fair. So again, that's really nice that we can date exactly when this was, and the Aztec calendar. Mason Pavilion. This archway, by the way, was relocated after the fair and is on the grounds of a Mason facility in the Midwest. I forget exactly where it is. I have to look at my notes, but you can look at Google Earth, and there it is, sitting out behind the building. So it's nice that it survived. And that would be it. We end with the ends for Mason. So again, I don't know if I have Montana or something coming up further down the line. Let me stop sharing screen. But you know, what I basically do when I scan these, the scanner has several settings. I scan it just raw, but I also scan it with what's called digital ice. It will take out the you know, some of the dirt and scratches and that sort of thing. So I've only shown the raw versions here, but it takes a while. It takes about 5 minutes to scan each picture, and then it takes a long time to clean them up and get rid of the Scotch tape marks and that sort of thing. But I've got, well, let's see if I can hold it up here. Let's see about size. Oh, it disappears in front of me. But there's another stack of stuff left to be done. So we are into the New Yorks, New Jerseys, and then he also had some stuff that was up there that was I'm really looking forward to do. A whole thing of proposed pavilions and a whole brochure about the world of food, and just he had all sorts of other stuff like here. This won't show up too well, but it's a groundbreaking ceremony, and pull the little note off here 1 second. Batch A, but all these men are here and they're at the groundbreaking. I don't know if you can read it, for the Alabama Pavilion, which never came to be. So there's just all sorts of really neat stuff that oh, this is Mike Pender off to the side. He was the guy in charge of the state exhibits at the fair, and his son John was the fellow selling off this particular batch. He wasn't selling off the ones we saw earlier today, but Mike was a pack rat, and thank God for Mike. Super nice guy. You ever got to meet him? Back before, you know, the internet, they would have World's Fair shows at like the Adria Hotel in Queens, and people would be setting out a table, and Mike would be there, and he had some stuff of everything. So let me just see if I can grab something here. Where did it go? Here we go. The sort of stuff Mike would take home at the end of the fair. He was one of the last people to let go, but he would bring home all sorts of stuff. So, you know, if you need a thing like a road sign for the Avenue of Progress, you know, he would take it home, and his son has been selling stuff off on eBay. So, you know, it's you can still see the bolt holes over here was attached to, you know, the sign pole. But, you know, Mike was a super nice guy, and you meet him at the various things. He did a World's Fair Collectors newsletter for years and years until age caught up with him. And I've been scanning and digitizing all those. I hope to put them all online shortly. But, you know, you can think about, you know, thank God there were guys like Mike, that is, the fair is coming down, you're driving through the construction field, throw it in the back of the car, take it home. And his son said, yeah, the garage was absolutely packed with stuff, you know, and the Penders later moved to Florida, and they moved all the stuff down to Florida, and now John is selling it off bits and pieces. So it's kind of fun. I don't know what I'm ever going to do with an Avenue of Progress sign, but I couldn't pass it up.
Do you
So
know
any,
if, do you
any
know if he's
comments,
still
thoughts?
selling things?
Sorry, Rainey, go ahead.
Or do you know if John Pender is still selling stuff on eBay?
Yeah, he hasn't done as much as used to. I think he had a little health issue, and you know, I've kind of gone back off it, but I still I have him bookmarked, and sometimes it goes in waves, you know, and sometimes I was joking with John about, you know, maybe I could just mail you my paycheck and make this easier on both of us. I mean, he would put up some really neat stuff, and again, I got a lot of the World's Fair Corporation photos that his father took home, where they would give a presentation, you know, to say the state of Alabama, your pavilion would be here, and this would be this and everything. And then the thing would get scrapped, so it would come out and get thrown in a box of dead pavilions, and you end up with all sorts of you know, architectural images and things like that. One of the things that Mike took home was on the major the map, the giant model of the fair, that, you know, they would put down a little 3D model of the Alabama Pavilion. And when it was canceled, they would pick it off the map, or if they would say this is the earlier travel and transportation, take it off, put the new one on. He took all those little models home. So I mean, some of them are pretty small, you know, little models, but you know, like his model, and his son was selling them off. The little model of, you know, what was it, the Wisconsin Pavilion looked totally different when it was first built from what they actually built. But, you know, rather than just throwing them out, Mike took all the stuff home. It was really great. So, nice to know that, stuff survived, and some of us are able to enjoy it because, what one guy's foresight of not just letting it all go into the trash bin. Excuse me. Let me just take a look at the chat here, and feel free to chat amongst yourself. I am chatting as a guest. Okay. Thank you. I don't know what that means. I love the other day, I went to do a talk, and I sign on, we are now updating your client, and it's like, it's not like, we would like to update your client. Could you wait till the next time, or do you want to do it now? So one of the things I've realized now is anytime I'm going to do a Zoom, a good 5 minutes before I plan to do it, you better do it. Otherwise, they're going to do it for you. Oh, so Carolyn's saying you would take the captions off the back of the pictures as soon as you could. Yeah, most of the time I pick the pictures up out of the stack of them, and the paper comes falling down to the floor because the glue no longer works at all. So. And Beth gave us a nice link for the 39 World's Fair collection. Yeah, it's they have some tremendous stuff on online. Oh, Randy, you and I have something in common. I hated chunky bars too.
They're disgusting to me. It's and I love sweets and I love chocolate, but boy, it's all the junk they throw in it that bugs me.
Yeah, what did they have in them? I just don't remember them too well, but I remember not liking them. Was there like, raisins or other stuff in there?
I think raisins, and that my hate of raisins and chocolate together, I hope none of you were eating, comes from, I had the flu really bad as a kid. My mother had a candy dish on the coffee table in the living room, and I was, on the couch covered up in blankets, excuse me, watching TV. Well, I managed to eat the entire bowl of chocolate covered raisins, and of course threw them all up because I was sick with the flu. And my mother had gone out to the bank or something just down the block, and she came home and saw me throwing up, and then noticed that the candy dish was empty. So it showed me a great deal of sympathy in the form of a fly swatter to my rear end. Anyway, yeah, so I have an aversion to chocolate and raisins together.
That would do it. It was yeah, I have to see if they're still I don't remember what was in them. I just remember not liking them. And when you first would go there thinking, oh, they're going to give you a free candy bar. No, they sold it. They didn't give it away. So I don't know how long the Fine Arts Pavilion was actually there in use. I'd have to see if I could look that up. And hot dogs and hamburgers. I had a corn dog. Yeah, at my daughter's wedding. At the rehearsal dinner. People have probably seen this before, but my dad had always been a big thing at weddings to have something he'd never had before. So and he had never had a cheeseburger, so his idea, like Carol won't eat a cheeseburger. She likes cheese, she'll eat a hamburger, but a cheeseburger is just, doesn't want to do it. So my dad would have a cheeseburger. You're muted, Carol.
That's not the reason I don't eat cheeseburgers. It's because you can't really taste the cheese on top of the hamburger. So why have it that way?
To me, it's an extra ambiance of it.
I don't know. I like them both separately, but together.
But I had never had a corn dog. So at the rehearsal dinner, they made a big thing about keeping the tradition alive. And they brought out a corn dog, and that remains the one and only corn dog I've had, and it will probably remain the one and only corn dog. So
You didn't like it?
it was so sweet. And Carol knows I'm a hot dog nut. I'll go and grill them in the backyard. I'll eat them. We go to New York, and I am making a pilgrimage to Nathan's, must have, sort of thing.
Marco likes corn dogs, so that's why.
Yeah.
You should have liked them too, I guess. I don't know.
No, just never.
The batter is on the sweet side, but you have to have a good mustard that kind of counteracts that.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We go to New York, and we go to Nathan's, and I always get a hot dog, and I love their French fries. But Carol likes it because they have all the free sauerkraut you can eat.
Okay, and I don't eat hot dogs because when I was a child, I used to get a headache every time I would eat a hot dog, and I was made fun of then. But one day I was reading in the newspaper that scientists discovered that the red dye they were using on hot dogs then gave some people bad headaches, and I felt vindicated, but I still don't like hot dogs.
Hey, Carol, I'm with you on the sauerkraut.
Oh, yay.
Oh, me too. I love sauerkraut, yeah.
Well, it's yeah, it was one of the things where I would go to Germany, and you know, they'd have little stands on the side of the, just walking down the street, like in the Marienplatz in Munich. And I went out there, and I wanted to get a hot dog, or you know, a sausage, anything, and I got a real kick out of it, because you know, you get used to the hot dogs here with the buns that are cut, and you open up and you put the hot dog on, and you can put your, you know, your ketchup or your relish or whatever. But the thing, I went up to this booth in Munich, and I order as my terrible German, you know, hot dog. And they take the bun out. They have a metal spike sticking there. And they take the bun and they ram it down the metal stick, and pull it up, and that's off the hole through it. And they just slide the hot dog into the bun and hand it to me. And I'm going, you know, how am I going to put mustard on it? And they looked at me like I was an alien about, you know, going to ruin their beautiful sausage with, you know. But I just got a real kick out of, man, are the Germans industrially, you know, I mean, here, go. You know, I'm trying to get my mustard in around the cracks, so it changed. So next week, if all goes well, we'll see what's on the N through Z. I don't think there are any Z's, but I'll also try to get to some of the unbuilt pavilions for you. That might be a separate day, depending on how many of them I have. But like I said, displays on the World of Food Pavilion, which got started and never got torn down. The Arkansas and other state pavilions. When I was doing the second book we were doing on the fair, we did a whole chapter on pavilions that never were. And yeah, there were some of them that were really impressive, like the Midwest states. They were you know, gonna have this whole thing, a giant simulated hang gliding thing, which is like what Disney now has with soaring over you know, California, soaring around the world. But some of the Western states were going to build a giant, I mean, we're talking huge mountain. And inside you would have displays of Colorado and you know, other states, but with snow-topped mountain on the top, and you know, it was a giant thing. And you look at it and go, my God, what that would have cost just for the steel to build this thing. So, but again, if people don't dream, you know, some of these things aren't going to get built. And it was just really great. Again, thank God for Mike Pender. He brought so much of these failed presentation stuff home, and it's just kind of interesting to see. I mean, the whole NASA display that was supposed to be at the pavilion in Texas that never came to be, but you know, that at least exists in photos. So I hope folks enjoy today, and I hope the winter weather doesn't get to be to you too much. Are you going to get much snow up there in Toronto, Harold?
Actually, we were supposed to have about 10 inches today, but it turned to rain last night, and the grass is green. So we're fine here, just out west. My sister was planning to visit her son out in Alberta, and this weekend the temperatures were supposed to be a high of 30 below, but her flight got canceled yesterday.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're going next weekend when hopefully it'll be a little warmer there.
Yeah, so I think I saw a lot of pictures in the a lot of snow in the Montreal area.
Yes, they really got hit.
Yeah.
So
And
our daughter lives in Seattle now, and it's been the coldest there in 25 years.
Yeah.
It was 15 degrees Fahrenheit. This was it yesterday, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday.
going down to 9, right?
Yeah.
What's been interesting, a week ago, you know, upstate New York has been having an absolute snow drought. And there was a picture of a town, I can't remember the name of it. They call themselves the snowmobile capital of the East. And they had a picture of their town square where there's a, you know, looks like a thermometer, but it's a height gauge of how much snow. And there was 0 snow on the ground, 0. And this one town, if you ever happen to look for a town called Long Lake, and it's a long lake. And it's really nice though, because you come along and you drive along, and you go through the tiny little town, I mean, and then across a bridge, and off you go. But they have webcams there that I love all summer long. Before we took our trip there, looking at the webcams, and we went out on the we went and visited. Carol and I went out, stood there, looking at the phone, Okay, the webcam's on, wave, we had a picture. But the lake froze over. They put out how warning that it's not quite thick enough, don't walk out on the ice. And a week later there was no ice. It had all totally melted, just for somebody that lived in upstate New York where it's 20, 30 below zero, and you see the lakes in December with no ice, it's amazing. Now the webcam a week ago shows it's snowing and the lake's freezing again. But I mean, upstate New York, people are saying they haven't had snow in 2 years in some of these places. That's just, it's scary from the thought of global warming. It truly is. When I went there, we'd have 4 feet of snow on the ground all winter long. I mean, it just snowed, it stayed there. Now it snows and it's gone. So, well, I'm glad you.
One of us should write a book about it.
Yes, somebody should, Tom. If only who should do that for us? Tom, if people go back into the archives for this, he did a really great talk, about the book he wrote, the dangers that people still seem to stick their head in the sand. But, like I said, when you go up there and the snowmobile capital of New York has 0 snow on the ground on January 1st, man, things have changed. They really, really have, and not for the better. So of course now people are going to get hit with all this snow, and then they're going to say, "Oh, it's not happening." Randy?
You mentioned, just jokingly, you mentioned about the iPhones that were sucked out of the Alaska aircraft. I don't know if any of you recall, Nikon did an ad way back when, the classic Nikon F camera. Vietnam war photographer lost it. It fell out of a helicopter as they were landing about 200 feet off the ground. He was able to retrieve it. It was dented, but it worked. They used that in their ads for a couple of years.
It's astonishing how, I joke before you knock the phone off the desk and it dies. In reality, I've been very lucky. I dropped a few iPhones and they actually work fine. But Carol will know all too well in the kitchen. She can, whether she does it or I do it or somebody else, will knock a glass over and it will fall onto the tile floor and bounce. And you go, "Oh wow, that's pretty neat." Another time you'll be on the counter, it will just flip over on its side and shatter into a million pieces. So it's all, I guess, of what angle they hit at or something.
Could it be that the cell phones that fell out of the aircraft landed in a softer spot, maybe, rather than on cement or something
I
hard?
heard it landed in some bushes, actually.
Yeah.
See, that would be better for it.
But, someone was talking
Yes.
about the concept of terminal velocity, that as you drop something, it can only go so fast and it doesn't keep picking up speed. So whether you drop it from 1,000 feet or 16,000 feet, it's still going to end up at the ground. And Carolyn could probably tell us all about that, or Ken Carpenter probably knows a lot more about it. But their whole concept was, after a certain height, it doesn't matter how high it is. Is that true, Caroline?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is what Carol said, is it landed in a soft spot.
Right.
Because I don't think, the height from where it fell, I don't think the atmosphere would have bothered or anything like that. But, they were lucky it wasn't raining or something.
I just know with my luck, I'd be walking down the street and the phone would fall on.
Yeah.
Well, when that door fell down, that door weighed 80 pounds. Imagine if that hit you, it landed in somebody's backyard.
Every now and then you see in the news about somebody, a part falls off an airplane, or even they have a leak on the laboratory and the ice falls off and it comes down and it goes right through somebody's roof. And they had somebody came down and went through the roof and basically destroyed a large part of the house. But they were asking, "Did you save the evidence?" And they said it all melted, because it was these days, though, with flight trackers, they can tell you right who is over your house, and they can come back and figure out if this came into your house at 3:18 in the morning, which airplane it came from. So it's pretty scary, though, the thought of walking along and having, like you said, or an 80-pound airplane door drop on your head. So we live on just off the flight path of Van Nuys Airport. but I think I'm not doing a yard work for a while. Carol knows I never do it anyway, so.
I'm directly under the flight path. They go over the house every 90 seconds.
Oh, no, when I lived on Long Island, we were in one of the alternate flight paths for Kennedy Airport, depending on the weather. And when the house would start shaking, you go, fogged in at Kennedy tonight, you know. Did not like that at all. What I loved is I bought a condo in Burbank, across the 5 freeway from Burbank Airport. We were very close to the airport, and I was the first person or the second person to move in, and about 6 months later, there's about 20, 30 people there. We're out by the pool, and the jets are coming in, you know, to land at Burbank Airport. And this one woman says, "What's with all the jets?" And I said, "Well, you know, the runway is, you know, whatever, you know, 1,000 feet or something over there." He goes, "Well, they're gonna have to stop that. I didn't sign up for this." And he goes, "How does somebody not realize there's an airport? I mean, not a tiny airport, but a big airport on the other side of the highway."
Bill, it sounds like Orange County Airport, where excuse me, the airport's been there forever, but people insist on building, you know, $5 million homes in the flight path, then want them to cut back the flights or have the airplanes take off so steep. I can remember one time we were taking off out of there, and my coworker and I were sitting on the aft jump seat, and right across from us were the ovens, and the meal that day included soup. We took off so steep that every drop of soup in that oven spilled out the bowls and onto our laps.
Oh,
yeah.
Hey, Randy, I think they have to do noise abatement out of that airport.
Yeah,
When
they
I flew out of there, we had to do that.
They usually make an announcement, the takeoff
Yeah, yeah.
steeper than you're accustomed to, right? But
well, Burbank, they take off at a very steep angle going out of Burbank for exactly that.
Well, they have to.
Carolyn, you know who Evans and Sutherland are, don't you?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I
Oh,
work for
good.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
I was friends
started out
with,
doing flight simulators. Yeah.
I was friends with Mike Evans, and I didn't know Ivan Sutherland at the time, but he's still alive.
Yeah, I know.
They were all just awarded. If for you, Bill, you probably know him too. There, did the original flight simulators clear back in '69, I think, is when they started. So
I don't know what year they started. I just know when I was building a submarine simulator, we were using flight, and that was in 1973. We were using aircraft simulators as the basis for
model,
our
yeah,
submarine simulators.
yeah, that
Randy,
makes
you
total
might
sense.
appreciate, you know, a story about angle. I took a flight one time from London to LA right at Christmas time. So the weather's terrible and everything. And they announced that we were very, very heavy because of all the Christmas gifts that we were bringing on. We hit this tremendous headwind, and we were not going to be able to make it to LA in our fuel loads. So we landed somewhere in Washington, and this was before cell phones and everything else. And we landed hard, and they damaged the nose gear. So we're now I'm sitting up in first class, and they're pounding, you know, and they say, "Oh, we're making an adjustment to the nose gear," and the plane is shaking like a 20-pound sledge adjustment. Finally, and they couldn't let anybody off the plane because they had no international customs or anything. So they opened the jetway, and they would hand in more cases of soda and stuff, but nobody could get off. You couldn't, no cell phones or anything. So poor Carol was like, "Where's Bill?" Right? Well, they finally get to the plane ready. We were there about 3.5, 4 hours as they finally fixed it. And they took out to the end of the runway, and the pilot said, "You probably noticed when we came in that this is a very short runway." And he said, "We don't normally land 747s here, but we had to land someplace, and now I've got the challenge of getting you all out of here." And he goes, "So I'm going to be parking at the end of the runway. I'm going to be revving the engines up very, very hard. The plane's going to shake till it feels like it's falling apart, and then we're going to go. So hang on, we're going for the ride." And he did it. And he just, I mean, we're sitting there, it's shaking and shaking, and he went, and it climbed up faster than my airplane could go up. I mean, at the angle was incredible. So we just shot up, and we got to about 20,000 feet, and he landed. Is anybody else impressed by the folks at Boeing?
And Randy's going, "Oh no, the soup."
Yeah.
I was going to say, was that an Air Force pilot?
this was a very old 747, so I was just glad that it held together for the flight.
Was that an Air Force or Navy pilot? Do you know?
What's that?
Air Force or Navy?
Yeah, good question. So yeah.
Those were the days when
Usually-
Boeing had all the bolts, they had all the
usually
bolts
Navy.
tightened properly in those days.
Yeah, they put all the bolts in. I tell you, but
Yeah,
I was thoroughly impressed with the angle that thing could go at. So I bet, Randy, in the future you didn't put your soup out just yet.
Well,
You know, I was
we-
saying we're under
we
the
had-
flight
we had
path
no
here.
choice.
When I first moved here, we were not under the flight path. Then I got it one day and they got all these planes here. So I called the airport. They said, "What's going on?" They says, "Oh, the flight path is now over to your house." And they
Oh.
said the FAA decided for efficiency, we're going to run the planes over your house now.
You
So
know,
we have
Herb,
no
it
say in
cost
the matter.
me
Is one day you wake up and there it is.
Wow. Almost $10,000 to get them to do that to you, Irv.
Yeah.
Hey, Irv, they
said
did
it's
that to
permanent,
us too.
Permanent.
They did that to
I
us
was-
too.
I was living
I'm
up
40
north. Go ahead, Carolyn.
I'm sorry. They did that to us too. I'm about 40 miles or so from DIA up in the mountains, and they shifted 2 flight paths over us and
Yeah.
renamed them. They're called Coors and Molson. And we get jets all the time. I sit outside in the summertime and I've got flight radar 24 and I know exactly what's going overhead. And sometimes they're less than a mile overhead.
I'm
And
actually
that's 10 minutes
25
from the
mile-
airport.
I'm actually 25 miles away from the airport. You wouldn't think they'd be that low,
Oh,
but they
amazing.
are.
I
They
got a
should be a
kick
lot
here.
higher when you're 25 miles out.
Tom mentioned there are a bunch of articles on the line that say every hot dog you consume takes 35 minutes away from your healthy life. Tom, that is total bullshit because I'd be dead 6 years ago.
Well, it doesn't say it'll kill you. It just says it, impacts your health.
Yeah. You know, what's scary though is, Carol was the one who eats healthy. I'm sitting there having a hot dog and a beer and Carol's having a salad. And which one of us had the heart attack? So part of it's what
Exactly.
you eat, but part of it's genetics too. So
And
Sure.
What Carol was saying about the cheeseburgers was funny. I thought maybe you're keeping kosher. You don't want to mix the dairy with the meat.
No, it's not for that reason at all.
no, she just she likes the taste of both, but to me, a hamburger is boring. I like a cheeseburger. I don't know.
Actually, out in your area, Bill, you got Pink's hot dogs. And they got
Yeah,
all
what?
these weird flavor hot Pink's hot dogs.
Yeah, they're not too near here, and they're so crowded every time you go over there that I wouldn't go over there. Just that we
Which
had a
place was that?
Pinks.
Oh,
Thanks.
Pink's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pink's, but they
We
got
had an
the oddest
LAPD
combinations.
event about a year ago that was it was perfect. It was at the Bush Brewery, and so we had this whole big meeting, and it was at the employee presentation area. And after they had all the beer you wanted and all the Pink's hot dogs you wanted. So
Or they could have had Tommy's there too.
yeah, they could. Well, Tommy's is just across the street from the brewery.
That's right.
So yeah, absolutely. But it was really funny because I'm such a rule breaker. We get there and everybody thinks this is an LAPD event and we can't have the beer. And I said, well, I'm not in uniform. So I just walked up and asked for a beer. Next thing you know, there's 200 people in line behind me realizing, oh, we can have beer. So as long as you're not in uniform. So, well, next week, hope to see you back more. Oh, Randy, go ahead.
So real quick, you mentioned Pink's. Is there just one Pink's?
No,
Well,
I think there are 2.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I think there was another one and one of them closed, if I'm
I
not
think they
mistaken.
might have one up at City Walk right now, but I think there's just the major one. And then I think they
In
did.
Hollywood, West
yeah.
Hollywood, right?
That's
Right.
the one that, yeah, Betty White used to have Pink's hot dogs delivered to her house. Yeah.
At Pink's, they make their hot dogs in like 25 different flavors and combinations. They got some exotic hot dogs.
Yeah, Betty lasted just short of 100. So there, so much for Tom's theory. If she hadn't eaten those hot dogs, she'd go to 192 or something. So.
You're making me
All
hungry.
conservatives, you'll die later.
Yeah. Oh, real quick before we go, Beth, I wanted to mention, I don't know if I sent you the email. Beth sent some pictures that Andrew found from the Rose Parade, I think in 1954, 57, somewhere in there.
Yeah, 54.
54. And there were 3 pictures of the city of Burbank float that they did not have in their archives. So they were absolutely thrilled and thanked him for sending them. So I said that I'm sure he'll keep an eye out for others that are on their want list. So,
Sure.
but yeah, they were absolutely thrilled and sent a giant thank you.
Oh, good.
Say Beth, I thought I had your email and I didn't have it, but I was going to ask you if Andrew would be interested in more glass slides. I mean, is he after just certain ones, or?
Yeah.
But I was at an antique shop. Gosh, it's almost a year ago now, and I just noticed they had a whole ton of glass slides. Is that,
Yeah, let us know where. So
or maybe
the
send
main,
him out west,
yeah. Yeah.
and
We'll
I'll
just have
take
to do
him
a
to the
race trip.
store.
Yeah. Yeah, that main set he got had about 2,000, 2,100 slides in it, but
Oh,
we've added
wow.
a few more, smaller sets to the collection. These Rose Bowl sets were actually glass slides too, but they were a little bit unusual. They're about 2¼ inches square. I hadn't seen any quite that size or quite like that. Without a border, like the picture is about 2¼ inches square, but they're glass. And the color was really good. We were surprised at how clear they were.
Yeah, I
Different
guess.
manufacturers, I guess, different standards. It's like I'll get a piece of film and I have all these holders for the various scanners, and sometimes you go, where the hell did this film come from? It doesn't fit any one of 6 different holders, so then you have to try to make a holder, come up with shims or something around it. But you figure somebody had a camera that held that particular film, and we're talking stuff from the 20s, 30s, who knows what they were doing with some of that stuff. So, well, great. I'm going to go take Carol for lunch, and I will promise I am not going to try to make her eat a cheeseburger or a hot
Thank
dog.
you.
Yes. Yesterday, by the way, just the people that may follow me on Facebook, I mentioned we were out trying to. It always seems we have accidents right at lunchtime. The traffic guides always say, "Hey, let's go get them today." But yesterday I was able to combine my 2 giant loves of things. We get a call for a 4-car collision in a hamburger place parking lot. So we were able to get there. Matter of fact, let me find it real quick. Let me just get this pictures. We were at one collision and you're dealing with it, and you figure okay, that's going to be the bad one for the day, and then you go, well, not really. So we get this call for a collision at a hamburger place. If you're familiar with the restaurant In-N-Out Burgers,
Yeah.
they primarily the early ones are drive-through, and in this particular one, they've now started building them with seating areas, but this particular one is still just drive-through. So we get the call that somebody has driven into it, and she hit a car, which hit another car, which hit the next car, which hit the next car. So this was we end up having to clean up this mess. But we figured it's
When
going
they
to
said
take a while for
drive-through,
the
the
tow
word
to
too.
get here. So we walked over to the lady who was taking orders for everybody in the drive-through line. We ordered our food, sat down, finished our burger just as the tow truck got there. So it all worked out just fine. And luckily,
They
she
said drive-through, they took it literally, didn't they?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was drive-through. God,
They drove through all right. You
well,
hear that a lot of people driving in the buildings. That's quite
about 6
common.
weeks ago, we had one of those. Somebody was getting, and this lady swore, my car got away from me, and the harder I pressed on the brake, the faster it went. Okay.
Yeah.
But about 6 weeks ago, we had somebody that got in their car, and they put it into what they thought was drive, and they thought they put it in reverse, and it was in drive, and they went right into the restaurant. I mean, the car was fully inside the restaurant. So I got there, and I was the first one on scene, and I had to get down on my hands and knees and look under the car, and thank God there was nobody, no customers under the car. But it happens, the gal, those were older people, like our age, old. The gal yesterday was 30-ish, something, and she just panicked. They said she came down the street, flew in there at 40 miles an hour, and just smashed into the car in front of her. And again, thank God nobody was hurt or killed or anything there. So, but I did get my hamburger yesterday. So
Was she just out of control, or was she trying to enter the
she
drive-through?
was trying to go for lunch, and when she thought she was getting, because it's on Balboa Boulevard, 3 lanes each direction. She's coming up on the curb lane, thought she was slowing down to go into the restaurant, and the car went fast, almost because she hit the wrong pedal. But as she said, because we're asking, ma'am, exactly how did this happen? Because we're looking to see if there's any signs of impairment. drugs, mental, or anything like that. So we're talking to her and trying, just also trying to assess, what sort of condition she's in. And then, oh no, the harder I press on the pedal, the faster the car went.
Funny thing about that.
Yeah, yeah. It happens more often than one would possibly believe, but generally more with older people, that it happens. And then we refer them to the DMV for a follow-up test. She
Yeah,
just,
how confused you have to be to do something like that.
I think it's interesting, some of us handle things really quickly and other people just panic. And, from her point of view, my foot is on the gas. I know it's on the gas. Something's wrong with the car. Sorry, my foot's on the brake. I know it's on the brake. I better try this even harder. And they don't stop and realize, that you're making it go faster. It happens so fast. The whole thing happens in, 3 seconds or something. But yeah, it's so we beat out the lunch gods yesterday. The hell with them. So and the next one was in front of a Pizza Hut. So the first one was in front of a Starbucks, then in front of this, and then in front of a Pizza Hut. So I was saying to my partner yesterday, I was afraid to get back out on the road because we literally spent 3.5 hours going from one to another to another. So crazy times. Well, we'll see you next week, and I'll go figure out where I'm gonna go take Carol to lunch. Take care.
Okay,
Take care.
thank you
Bill.
so
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right,
Enjoy
bye.
lunch, Carol.
Bye, folks.